And of course, everybody shows up. Even if I was in narco, I would have had to show up.
Crime don't take no holidays, my friend.
It doesn't. Apparently not. So I go in, and it's a homicide, no doubt about it. The guy is murdered under his Christmas tree, and the perp threw the tree, and the presents on top of him. There was some anger involved in it, obviously. Doors kicked out, and it's here we go.
Hey, how you doing? Here we go. Another episode of Another Nobody with me, Travis Myers. And today we're going to have our second appearance of my friend Brian Robertson. Really good guy. Did 31 years with the Kingston Police Department up in the Hudson Valley. Undercover work, detective work, investigative work. He was a cop, a detective, sergeant, lieutenant, hostage negotiator. He did all kinds of stuff, this guy. Very, very interesting man. All right? That's why we had him back for the second time, because we didn't get to talk quite nearly enough the first time around. Anyway, I'm happy you're here. Check him out. Enjoy. All right. Hey, Brian, how you doing?
Good, man. How are you? Good to see you again.
So nice to have you back. So nice to have you back. I tell you what, that last show was a big hit. A lot of people wrote in about that one. You know, they liked you very much. Absolutely. And we're so you're able to come back and sit with us again. So let's just jump right into it. Well, you know, for everybody, if people didn't listen the last time, okay, we have with us today Brian Robertson. All right. 31 years in the Kingston
31, yeah, 31.
And still currently working for the DA's office as an investigator, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, so you have quite a long history in the crime.
It's been a ride.
Yeah, I'm sure it has. I mean, the majority of that, again, for people that didn't listen last time, was as an undercover, or as an uncle, as we like to say, doing all kinds of narcotics work for cities all up and down the Hudson Valley. Some pretty hairy stories. But then you were also promoted to sergeant and eventually lieutenant for KPD, where you went back to patrol, got stuck in the squad, and yeah, I mean, did just about everything. I know you worked for the marshals a little bit too, correct?
I did, correct. Yes, as a TFO.
So, I mean, I don't know where to start, but why don't you tell us, I don't know, maybe working for the squad, you probably caught your first homicide. How's that?
Sure. That's a good start. So for me, like kind of coming from a narco background, and so Kingston, I'll just give you an overview of what the Kingston Police Department's detective division compiled of.
Yeah, please.
It's a night squad, a day squad, and a night squad, right? We didn't have night squad midnight to. We didn't have the midnight shift we had on call for that. You know, it's a smaller PD. We didn't have the manpower to cover all three shifts. So
we actually do the same thing in New York City.
Oh, you did?
We call Night Watch.
Night Watch, right.
It's a squad that works, but detectives rotate in and out of it.
Oh, so you actually had guys on from midnight to 8.
Exactly, but again, it's not the squad.
Right.
They'll catch the cases and then refer them back to the squad.
I remember hearing about that. That's okay. Oh, that makes sense.
Somebody's on, but it's not their case, if that makes sense to you.
So for us, we would have on-call for the month, right? So you were the on-call guy for January, whatever shift you worked, day shift or evening shift, you were covering midnight to 8. You're the on-call guy. Right. If it was, I don't want to say, I'll use the term, but like a bullshit burg, you came in, you got it started or whatever, and you would own that case for the most part. If it was a shooting, all hands on deck, everybody's coming in. You know, that's just the way it is. A homicide, obviously the same thing. So the paradigm's a little different. We didn't have a homicide unit. We are the homicide unit. We're catching birds. So when I went into the squad and learned that side of it, that's how it worked. And like everybody else, you start on nights and you work your way to days or whatever.
So you don't rotate. You don't bounce back and forth.
We didn't rotate. No. It was by seniority. And seniority pick. Some people wanted the 4 to 12 shift because for their lives or whatever, or second jobs or whatever it was, their kids, whatever. Most people wanted to work their way to days. So the squad consisted of 8 or 9 of us, basically split in half. And basically, the way the cases worked, if a heavy case came in, we all worked it. So even when I was in narco is connected, is detective, it's connected to the detective unit. So even in narco, we would help them if something happened. It was all hands on deck if it was a heavy case.
Yes.
And if it was not, even if it was a bad burg, most of the guys from the squad would say, "Hey, Johnny Jones got burglarized the other day," or "We think this. Do you know anybody that knows this? Can you put your word out with your CIs?" And we would help out with their cases. We would help bring those guys in if they were willing to talk. We'd have them talk. We'd try not to put the CIs on paper, obviously, but point us in the right direction. Tell us who we're looking for. It would cut down a lot of the running around. You know how it goes.
Yes.
So that's how that worked. When finally, it was kind of strange. I was in narco for a long time as a detective. And then at one point there was time to say, "Hey, we're going to put you in the squad for a while. You need to get squad time," and which I agreed with. I kind of wanted to try something different. And it was great for me because I did have a lot of sources, so it made it easy.
Yeah.
However, it's also very difficult because I'm not used to that whole, there was a lot more paperwork involved. It was new paperwork. It was new methods of investigating. I was used to, hey, get the information, go, move, let's go, and let's get to the next one, or build a big narco case.
Well, it's a funny thing, too, that what people don't realize about narcotics is, well, for us, we used to call our complaints kites, and I'm sure they probably still do.
Yeah.
We call them kites because basically we could fold them up in a paper airplane and throw them out the window. We're selling drugs or they're not. There's not a lot of investigating, and I'm not knocking, most of my time was as a narcotics detective. We're not knocking narcotics guys for that, but the fact of the matter is there's not a lot to investigate here.
Right.
Either they are selling drugs or they're not selling drugs.
Right.
Right? But when you have, I don't want to say more serious crimes, but more detailed crimes, there is a lot of investigation, a lot of paperwork.
Yes.
It's attached to these cases. And I'm not even talking about a homicide. That's the big one, or god awful rape. I'm talking about even, thinking about the things that these white collar guys do, these heavy, larcenies that again, it's just miles and miles of hours of paperwork.
Just to get to the collar. You're right.
Yeah, go ahead. But people don't understand that.
Yeah. And I learned that the hard way. I mean, I worked with the squad guys for years. I worked with them and understood that, but I was more of a narco-based guy. And they would come to me for this or that, and I would go to them for this or that. It was, and I always felt like we were all, hey, it's all together. And again, like I'll say this about Kingston, we are the homicide unit. Everybody was. Like when a homicide happened, all hands on deck. It didn't matter if you were narco, if you were juvenile detective or whoever. Everybody showed up and everybody worked. So we worked those cases together. And I watched because initially, and coming up, even when I was White Shield, I was assigned to the detective division a lot because I was doing a lot of narco stuff still. So they would bring me in and I would help out any way I could, right, with those cases. Let's go out and get leads, do this, do that. So you learned it. And I remember thinking, like, when these homicides were happening, we had, by virtue of Kingston being what it is, enough plenty of homicides for us to go around. And I remember everybody kind of catching them, and I always see the case agent freaking out. And I'm like, "Hey, what are you worried, man? We're all in it together. Don't worry. We got you. Like if you fail, we fail. If we fail, we're all don't worry, just because your name's on it, blah, 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 right?" Until it was my turn. And then when it's in my name, I said, now I get it. Now I get it. I own this one. And I didn't have a collar on that guy for 3 weeks, 4 weeks. And that was stressful. I was like, I don't want to have an open one. I didn't want to have, you want to close that for the family, for yourself, for the unit, for everybody, And
well, again, back to the narco thing, people don't realize when we're running out there, narcotics is a crazy, crazy, dangerous world and busy. I mean, you could lock up dozens and dozens of guys in a month, right?
Right.
But when you're doing the squad work, all right, that case is yours and it does not go away.
Exactly.
Right? Narcotics, we can close a case. Yeah, I was there. I sat there for 2 hours. I didn't see anybody. Case closed. That's how easy it is. But when you have a complainant, and especially if it's a serious case, it does not go away until you solve it.
Well, you have victims and victims' families. It's different, right?
Or-
A narco case, you work and you go, oh man, yeah, he just wouldn't bite. We couldn't get him. He was too slippery.
Exactly.
He's not active right now. He's shut down.
Yeah.
He's feeling the heat, whatever. And nobody cares because you care, but you're like, okay, we'll come back to him in 6 months. He'll be back to working or whatever. It's not as serious. And I learned that the hard way. It was interesting. I realized I had to respect that a lot more. And so for me, catching my first homicide, when I caught it, it was Christmas Day, of course.
Of
And
course.
I was a squad guy for about 6 months at that point.
Mhm.
And Christmas morning, I get a call from one of the patrol guys, a friend of mine, and he goes, hey, I'm going to need you to come in. We got a homicide. I said, shut the hell up. I thought he was just breaking my balls, right? I figured he was just breaking my balls.
Yeah.
Literally 10 o'clock in the morning, my son was very young and we're opening presents and I'm like, and he goes, well, you want me to put the sergeant on? I said, yeah, as a matter of fact, I do. And the sergeant was an old school friend of mine too. And yeah, it's legit. You got to be kidding me. So away I go, right? And of course, everybody shows up. Even if I was in narco, I would have had to show up.
Crime don't take no holidays, my friend.
It doesn't. Apparently not. So, so I go in and it's a homicide, no doubt about it. The guy is murdered under his Christmas tree, and the perp threw the tree and the presents on top of him. There was some anger involved in it, obviously. Doors kicked out, and it's here we go. That's what we got, right? Not a drug thing. None of that stuff made sense. No.
What'd they do to him?
What's that?
What'd they do to him?
They beat him to death. They beat him to death with a plate. Like when I say a plate, it was a big brass plate. That was the actual finish.
Jeez, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt. That was just
no, not at all. Not at all. That was, I mean, he literally bent it. It was a lot of anger involved in it. So, so we're looking at that. We're looking at angles, but this is different because this was a guy we didn't even know. You know what I mean? He wasn't on anybody's radar, no history, no blah, blah, blah. And, I think it turned out to be kind of a half-ass robbery or pickup thing, between two guys. And it went south, obviously. And it was obviously anger. The tree was on top of the whole nine yards. So we kind of get what happened, but we don't have a perp at all yet. And we didn't have a name for a couple of weeks. For me, that's hard. That was difficult because I was like, wow, I don't know if this one might be the one that stays open. I don't want to own the one that stays open. For a lot of reasons, for pride and personal, right? But more importantly, I'm like, wow, this guy's got family. I mean, you start to really feel that. Like you say, okay, somebody's going to want to know what happened here, and they're going to want some justice on it, and I get that. So, so we work it. My lieutenant, because I was a brand new squad guy, my lieutenant stayed with me with the lead box because with our place, basically, when you're the case agent, you spend very little time out. You're compiling your case. That was hard for me. I'm an out guy. I'm used to being out and working in the field and setting stuff up and running it out and moving around that way and working out in the street more than I am working in the office. So he helped me with the lead box. We worked the lead box. I'd worked them before, but not to this level where I owned it. And I'm working the lead box and doing my thing and sweating. It's like 2 weeks in, and we start figuring out where this guy might be. We send people out, and we eventually make a collar on the case, which is great. Now, the other part that was hard for me is we took this uptown to it's a homicide now. So the lead box, it's still a paper box. It's computer and paper still. We're in that era, right?
Let me interrupt you for one second there. The lead box for our listeners is it's your file.
Right.
It's your folder.
It's my case file.
Everything that you have is literally in a cardboard box.
Right.
So, all the information goes into that box. Just again, so people know what we're talking about. Right. We're talking, but some of our listeners may not be privy to.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm talking to you, and I keep forgetting. I got to remember to do that. But yeah. So the thing about a lead box, too, generally speaking, for us anyway, and I don't know if it's true with you. Small cases or small amounts of leads or whatever, they usually kind of get eaten up in a narrative. Yeah. A lead box, once a case gets big and you're sending leads out, they're leads that may be dead. They may be we followed up and no further. NFI, right? No further information. That's a dead lead. So moving on, we're proactively making, hey, we got a line on so and so that might know the guy. Okay, that's a lead, and I would assign that lead to the detective out there. I was used to being on the other side, being the guy assigned to go out and find it. So this was now I own this in my first 6 months, so I'm working my way through it.
Yeah.
So the case goes on.
Not only are you the arresting officer, you're also the administrator in charge of this case.
Exactly.
Something that, and I know it's the same for you as it is for us, that people don't realize. When a detective catches a case, it is your case. All right? Correct. The captain is not the boss. The sergeant is not the boss. The lieutenant is not the boss. You own it, you know? And people don't realize, again, the responsibility that comes with that.
Right. And what comes at the end of the day is you're the one that goes uptown to the DA's office, and you're the one that looks like an idiot if you don't have it together, and you look gold if you got your act together. So that becomes important because all the people involved, you're talking about probably 30 people involved with leads running out and doing this and that and the other thing, not counting other agencies that assisted. Like we caught this guy out of county, out of state somewhere. I forget where we caught him. We, not being me, I was in the office with the lead box with my boss, just grinding it out and making calls and keeping it going. So I learned a lot about the lead box because I'd been involved in plenty of them, and plenty of my paperwork's been in there. I'm not owning it.
Let's back this up just a little bit and describe the crime. Tell us exactly what happened to this poor guy.
Yeah. So it seemed to be some kind of meeting. It might have been a sex thing going back and forth or something. It was some kind of meeting like that. That's what we suspect. And there was a rage somewhere. The guy that he brought back was a rage. So the perp just had a rage. I don't know if
you think these two guys were lovers?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, that was the theory, you know, and I think casual, you know what I mean? I think it was a casual thing. And something went bad and this guy just went off. And you could tell just by the destruction and the disrespect at the end of it, you know what I mean? So that's it. There was passion involved, for lack of a better way of putting it. We track it down. We figure out who we believe the guy is. He's on the run a bit. We do some work. Again, not me, I'm the one inside. They go, we get the guy and we bring him back. And now the case, this is the part with squad work that's different for me too. You know, prosecuting a drug case is a lot easier because you know you got the right guy because you grabbed him at the end. You know what I mean? Usually with drugs on him, right? Or you have wires and you have video and audio of them and 4 cops that can testify, yep, I bought drugs from that guy. This is different. So we have a built case. It's a great case. And I'm just going to go back for a minute. Even as a patrol guy, I remember helping, we had a detective that was by far one of the most experienced detectives that I've ever worked with, still working with a typewriter and didn't want to go to a computer, would just bang away on a typewriter. Absolutely amazing guy, right? But old school. And when it came to warrants, I was writing a lot of search warrants, even at patrol level, but kind of patrol assigned to narco, just because I had gotten used to that. So I would write warrants for him. He'd say, hey, can you write one of the search warrant for me on this? Because you're good at search warrants. So I was like, okay, yeah, no problem. Like, I felt pretty badass writing search warrants for the detectives, you know, as a young guy. Like, look at this. And this is one of the best detectives I know, right? Yeah. So I start to feel like I can hang with these guys, you know, and I felt like pretty good about it. So I fast forward. Now I'm getting to the part where I have to take this homicide to uptown. And I have to sit with the DAs and the ADAs and go over the case, right? Big giant lead box. And they send me up because I'm a new guy. I'm a new detective and it's a homicide. They send him up with me, right? And I sat with him and so we sit with the DA, the ADA handling the case, my partner and him, right? My partner, Rick, I'll say his name. Rick's there and I'm sitting there. I'm like, okay, I've conferenced many cases up here. Now I'm sitting here with a lead box with 400 leads or whatever it is in it. And I look at him and I realize pretty quick I'm in deep water, right? I'm like, no, if I'm going to know, you know, I don't remember where everything, you know, he wasn't the case agent. And basically he took over the whole conference. Mm-hmm. over the DA. He's like, okay, this is what you're going to need. And I always remember, he licked his finger. He went to like this. You're going to need this. You're going to need this. You're not going to need this. You're not going to need this. You're going to need this. He added maybe 6, 7 pieces of paper to him. And the guy had nothing to say. I was like, I bow down to you and I will write all your search warrants until the day you leave here. Whatever you want from me, you got. And I learned my lesson.
Back to the last time you sat with us. All right. When we sat together and we talked about experience.
Yes.
You know,
It was experience.
He's an investigator, a seasoned detective who knew what the case would need.
Yes.
And he was able to pull it out for you.
So from that case, the conference was actually Rick telling everybody what to do. It wasn't usually it's the DA saying, I need this, I need that. You're going to have to go out and get this. We don't need that. You know, they usually go through the case. Rick literally saved all of that problem for him by handing him what he needed. Right. And because he had such a reputation up there, there was really no second guessing him or questioning him. You know, he would say, do you have this? Yeah, but you don't need that because you got this. Yeah, you're right. And that was the end of it. Like, I would have been there for weeks and then they would have slayed me. So I learned my lesson. You know, you got to be prepared when you go up.
So case-wise now, how long did this take you?
The case?
So it took you a few weeks to solve?
Yeah, to collar him?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we collared him. We got him in handcuffs probably 2 or 3 weeks in, which wasn't too bad. But still, it was a little nerve-wracking. You know, it's nice when you know where your guy is and you go and you do a warrant, you go get him.
And did it turn out that he did indeed have a relationship with this person?
Yes, but again, super casual. You know what I mean?
Casual, just a meetup.
Yeah, it was a
did he ever admit what threw him into a rage? Did you find that out?
No, but we got a conviction. You know, we got a conviction. He wasn't forthcoming, but it was. You know,
so there was no confession involved in it.
No, we didn't get him on confession, but we didn't need it. We got it.
You did say it was a pretty horrific crime scene.
Yeah, it was a horrible scene. It was a horrible scene to have to see and have to be part of on a Christmas day like that. It's a sad situation, you know. And the guy lived alone, so in some ways that was a good thing. Nobody came home to that per se.
Right.
Know, we didn't, but not that I remember anybody actually had. You know, it wasn't a whole family involved in the house or anything like that. So it could have been worse, but it could have been better. You know, I mean, it's a homicide. You know,
there's no nice.
What's that?
There's no nice ones.
No, there's no happy ending on them. Yeah, there's not at all. So that was an interesting case, and that's when I learned my lesson about why the case agent sweats. You know? Yes. I'm like, why is this guy sweating this so much? We're all in it. We're all going to win or lose. I always felt like, hey, we're a team, and we are. But like when it's your name on it, you don't want to have that open case for 15 years. You know. So
now, correct me, but I'm pretty sure I am correct. This was not your only experience with a holiday homicide.
Correct.
Right?
So that's true. So on a Thanksgiving, right, either before or after that, that come to my head right now, we had this is an interesting case. We had not during the holiday, we had a little girl get kidnapped. All right. So she's kidnapped. We get up on that pretty quickly and we make an arrest on it. It was a very serious case. He kidnaps her, takes her outside of town, kills her. And
now who is he?
It was Larry Whitehurst. It was Larry Whitehurst's case.
Was he related to this child or was it
no, he's related to the child because it was a domestic thing and he killed the child because it was an ex or a girl that he had been with. So, pretty brutal.
He murdered this child to punish.
Yeah, right, because of the domestic part. So, pretty horrible situation. And so that was not the Thanksgiving part of it, but that was a heavy case. We worked it for quite some time. We make a collar. We're feeling good about that. No problem with the case. Case went smooth. It's going through the court system smooth. So it's in the paper. It's a big case. It's been in the paper quite a bit. Fast forward or rewind if you want to go that way. Somebody reads the article in the paper and makes a phone call and says, we have a missing person, a female missing person. It's been missing for a while. We suspect she left the area. or we don't know where she went. She had a salty history, a little bit of a history, so we weren't really sure. She might have just moved, right, and just flew out of the scene. Nobody knew where she went. Case was an open missing person for probably 6-8 months or whatever, maybe something like that. So somebody reads this in the paper, reads it, who it was, who the perp was. He's been arrested. Makes a phone call to us and says, "Hey, last time I saw the victim, she was walking down the street with that guy."
Okay.
So now we're like, So I'll rewind a little bit. When we go to the house of this gentleman, right? We're in the house. We search the house, obviously. We get a search warrant. We search the house because he's the suspect. And we're down in the basement. And there's it's an old typical Kingston house. And you know Kingston. You own some of the houses in Kingston. You know how they are. Old, basements are old. And there's an old furnace spot where there used to be a regular, like a boiler, probably the old school boilers. But there's nothing there. It's just brick and it's cement on the bottom where the boiler used to be. And one of our guys is standing there, another detective. He's an old school guy. And he goes, fresh cement, right? So we both kind of go, yeah, imagine that. But we're only hours after her missing. So that's impossible. It's not wet cement. It's hard cement, wet, but it's not wet. You know what I mean? It's just fresh. So It's impossible. It couldn't have dried that fast. The girl was only missing an hour or two at that point, right?
Correct. Yeah.
So, but I'll never forget. He stood on it and goes, imagine that. We don't think about it anymore. We go, we do the case, we call her. So now we go back to the house. And now the last place she was seen was going into this house with this gentleman because that was his house. Mm-hmm. So lo and behold, this is on Thanksgiving. We're in the basement breaking up concrete and we're digging it up. And a hand came out. So obviously not in good shape with a phone cord on it. So,
with a phone cord on it?
Yeah, her hand was tied with a phone cord.
Yeah.
So she was obviously killed and buried in the basement and he cemented over it. So we do all the back work on the case. We find out when he got the cement, the whole 9 yards. We run the case all the way through and we finish that case up. But lo and behold, I mean, we didn't know we were actually standing on another homicide, which go figure. It just didn't make sense. And we weren't even thinking about that. We're dealing with trying to find this kid. You know what I mean? So it was, quite the shock.
The first case led to the second case.
Correct. And it was it was because it was in the media so much that somebody picked up the paper and went, wait a minute, because they saw a picture of the guy after the collar and said, the last time I saw her, she was walking down the street with him and went into that house.
Right.
So of course we got to go back and lo and behold, he's a bit of a, I don't know if you go serial, but that's two that we know of. Now we start looking at him pretty hard, Yeah.
So. Yeah. Now, how difficult was that to prosecute?
I think we didn't really have to go much further because he's life. Mm-hmm. So I don't know how we actually ended that. I think we held that. Once that went into the DA's office, again, I went back to work to doing what I was. I'm not sure if I think we convicted on that one too. I think they lumped it all into one at that point. I'm not sure. I have to double check myself, to be honest with you. But again, I should know, but I just remember we solved the situation, at least. We solved the missing person. I felt at least there was some closure there. Because there was always a thought like, was there foul play, but nobody knew why or when or how it could have been. Like, again, she had a checkered past. She could have gone anywhere, so. It is what it is.
Terrible, terrible, terrible stories.
Hey, how you doing? Another nobody here, Travis Myers. This one's going out in particular to all my drinking friends out there, because I got a new favorite thing, and it's called Shanky's Whip, and it is magical. It's Irish whiskey mixed with a little caramel, a little cream, a little vanilla, and it's heavenly. What more can I say? I suggest you pick up a bottle. You can have it as a shot with a cold beer, like I like. On the rocks, it's great. Mix it with a little cola. I promise you, you're going to love this stuff. Next time you raise a glass, think of me, I know the nobody, Travis Myers. Hey, do the right thing. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any more of my nonsense. All the best, my friends.
Buy our books!
Back to our narcotics days,
Yeah.
how often we would snag people up with drugs, and it would turn out that they were wanted for homicides, even multiple homicides. We got a guy one time who was wanted for 3 homicides, and we just happened to catch him, selling drugs.
Right.
Who knew?
Right.
So,
Again, we always say that, right? That's the building blocks. I mean, it's involved one way or the other, almost always.
always. Yeah. So now, what did you prefer? Did you prefer squad work or narcotic work?
I enjoy narcotics because I'm an ADD kind of guy. I like to, I like to chase the rabbit. I enjoy that. I enjoy working the case, moving it, and moving on to the next one. You know what I mean? I would say I'm built more for that. And in this day and age, when you're doing a homicide, it's down to geofences and, you're getting cell phone warrants and
What is a geofence?
a geofence would be like to track a phone and see what phones were in the area.
That's not my, that's before my time. I'm before that time.
I'm like right on the cusp of it. Like the detective that worked with me when I was at KPD as a lieutenant,
Mm-hmm.
I had great guys, and I'll say this right now. One of my guys, who's now my boss, works uptown, was always good at that stuff. He was just a natural. So he came to me, and I'm not going to profess just because I'm his boss that I know anything. I'm like, you do that. Tell me how it works, and whatever you need, I will get you resources.
Yes,
Never, just because I was a boss, didn't say I knew anything more than he did. If you had a question on the narco case, no problem. Yeah. No problem at all. So a good story with him and I, actually, he's a Spanish speaker, and he knew a lot of the people involved in this case. The FBI had a case that just closed and just made the paper now up here, but we wound up working on it with them. And we helped them. It was a case of a homicide that happened just outside of town, just outside of Kingston, but it stemmed from a Latin gang case out of Queens and Brooklyn.
Mm-hmm.
And they catfished one of the guys up here doing the wrong thing, I guess, talking to somebody. They catfish him. They bring him up to just outside of Kingston, murder him, bury him in a hole. And long story short, that stuff gets back to the FBI. They wind up here.
Let's slow that down and back that up a little bit again for our listeners.
Yeah.
Okay. When you say they catfished him to bring him up here.
Again, sorry about that. Yeah. They lured him up here. They lured him up here and got him up here, took care of him. They murdered him brutally, filmed it, and it was pretty bad. It was a bad situation.
Tell you, these guys are crazy with that now.
Yeah.
That the murders weren't bad back in the day.
Yeah.
But they actually film these to scare other people and see this is what we're capable of. The first time I saw that, I watched this. Shocked the shit out of me. You know, and to be a tough guy, right?
Right.
And where they had this poor woman who they literally cut her arms off while she was alive before they killed her, and filmed the entire thing as a threat to what's going to happen to you if you mess with us.
Interesting, because this was the same kind of thing, mutilation involved and everything. Put him in, cut him open, the whole thing.
Vicious,
horrible. But this guy did it. They also do it for proof for their shot caller, and that's what was going on here. Yeah. Yep. Mm-hmm. They wanted to prove to the shot caller work is done. You know what I mean? So it's interesting to see how that goes. Like, and it to them it seems almost casual. You know what I mean? And these guys all went back to work the next day, like nothing happened. Yeah, it's strictly business. So we wound up working on that case because initially people were coming up and we were seeing people involved not really talking to us. And I had a conversation with the state policeman. What's going on here? I heard they were in town, but we weren't really talking yet. So I was like, we need to have a meeting.
And so this is a gang from Queens who's working in Kingston or working...
Well, had connections here as well. Again, the New York gangs in Kingston and, between the Bloods and this and that, this was a Latin gang thing. They had people up here. So it was a lot of the people that live here are second generation. Mm-hmm. I'm from New York. You know what I mean? We're all a lot of people that live here are still connected to New York to some degree. Some of us with police work, some of us with crime, right? So that's what's going on. So the connection came. They brought them up here to do their work. They did their work. So the detective and myself, because he, one, knew all the people, two, spoke Spanish. And for me, on my end, I do part of the case already. I brought him in on it with me. I was a detective sergeant at the time. I said, you and me, we're going to work this together. We're going to go help these guys. Now, once the feds came up and we all sat down and talked, we got together great. I still speak to the case agent and to the boss there. They're great people. It was a great unit. It was a great investigation once we got together. So when they had something we could help them with, we helped them with it. They didn't need us. That's fine too. And it was a much larger case. Again, they just put the press release out not long ago, so it's an open thing now, but it's an amazing case. So I would go with him because one thing I'm pretty good at is talking to people. And one thing I'm pretty good at is kind of interviewing people on our end, like treating them not necessarily like a CI, but you know how it is when you talk to a CI. You have to kind of, I'll give you a little bit more credentials too. I was also a hostage negotiator at Kingston. So that was part of my gig. I always had a gift to work my way into talking to people. So that worked. I was also on the ESU team. So it was kind of weird. I could be there and switch hats. It was kind of nice to have. Yeah. So I had the tactical line and I also had the negotiator line. So sometimes I negotiated people into a tactical position where they could take them safely. You know what I mean? Like stuff like, it was kind of interesting to have that kind of. Anyway, long story short, I talked a lot. I'm a typical Irishman, right? So I would go and kind of handle that part of it. But I didn't speak Spanish, and my detective, he was just great at it. Benny, I'll say his name too. And he knew all the players because he knew all the kids because he worked with them in the school and stuff. So between the two of us, we got a lot of work done for them. Helped them out as much as we could. And that was an interesting case because it was great to see units that weren't working together, not getting where they could have got to faster if we all worked together right away. You know what I mean? And myself included, I was kind of territorial. I'm like, what's going on? Nobody's even telling us, so on and so forth. And when we sat down and had the meeting, all that went away. So it's amazing when agencies actually put the egos away and just go to work. And they were great. They had no ego. They were 100% no problem with us. So
as you know, that's not always the case with different agencies. They don't get along.
Not at all.
You know, that's nice to hear. So
yeah,
you said this turned out to be a giant case. Give us some details, man. What was the scope of this case?
I'm sorry.
No, you said this turned out to be a giant case.
Yes.
Give us some details. What was the scope?
To be honest with you, I have to sit down and talk to them about that part of it because I know part of it was somebody was informing and somebody else was doing this and that. And it was all out of, I want to say Long Island and Queens Long Island, Queens, and Brooklyn was the majority of the case. I never really got into that part of it with them because we were working so much on our part. I knew that those were parts of the case.
Well, you had one arm of the octopus that was up in the Hudson Valley.
Correct. This was way bigger. And they didn't tell us all of that. And they did tell us the basics. But I didn't really need to know every particular. They had some bodies buried and problems out there as well, out in Queens and Long Island. They were working that part of it. But when we were working together, we were working pretty hard on getting it done where we were getting it done. You know what I mean? So, and they had no problem talking to us about it, but we really didn't need to know that part. And I really wasn't necessarily what we were, just tell us what we need to do here. Let's get this done first, kind of thing. I actually have to sit down with them at one point and learn the whole story, but they collared up a lot of people on that, which was a good thing. It was, that's a very successful Fed case. Sometimes they do those and they go on for years and years and years and they peter off. This one did not seem to do that. This one seemed to be that they got everybody they needed to be. So it seemed like a very successful case for them, and they were appreciative of our work with it, which I appreciated, But again, it took sitting down and saying, hey, we got to work this out, like what's going on?
Involved myself in 2 large joint cases like that, and to say the exact same thing you're doing. My part of it, our part of it, my team's part of it was literally, 5 of this 90 guys that got locked up.
Right.
I didn't know anything about the other 85,
Right.
but they were all attached somewhere along the line.
Right.
But I was only privy to what we were doing,
Right.
you know,
Same here.
and
Yep.
I knew it was part of an operation, but everything was so cellular that you didn't really know what was going on with the other, you know, and that's part of a safety thing too, to make sure the information doesn't get out.
Exactly, because it could be a mistake. It wouldn't even be necessarily somebody being dirty or grimy about it. You just, hey, you know, I talked to these guys and so, and yeah, I'm not insulted if you don't tell me the whole case. You know what I mean? If you tell me, hey, this part is a totally different thing, not my problem. You know what I mean? You good luck with it. And
But on
if
your
you need
end,
help, let me know.
poor guy that was butchered up on film,
Yeah.
and you had to catch the bad guys,
What's that?
and you ended up catching the bad guys.
Yes. Yeah, yep. So the guys involved in that, we got them again. Luckily for me, my detective, then we already knew he knew the kids from school. So he already knew who was involved in this pretty quickly. So we knew who that was, and then we knew who he knows and where he goes. So that helped me. And then interview wise, we worked together on that. And
Were these still school kids, or they just happen to know them?
The one was fresh out. The one was just, you know, that's when they get cultivated. You know, that's when.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's another thing that gets me too. You know, when you know, people say, "Oh, they're only kids. They're children. They're men." 16 years old. If you were committing these crimes, you are men. You know, you're very well aware of what you're doing. You know, and there's
no remorse.
There's a maturity that comes with that. You know, that is the average person does not understand.
Correct. And it's a brutal world. That whole, you know, the heavy gangs like that are just brutal. They're just there's just no respect for life, none.
Vicious.
You know, they watching that film and just looking at it, going, oh my God, this is no respect for life whatsoever. You know?
No.
And it's a shame at a young age.
Oh yeah, no. But again, that's like you say. That's when they're recruited. That's when they're taught.
Yeah.
And not for nothing, that's when they're the most malleable.
Correct.
You know, it's when they don't have geez, what can I say? The backbone to say no yet.
Well,
you know, they're
exactly.
they're picked up and they think it's I want to be part of this. This is what I want to be part of.
Yeah.
And they're pulled into it. Now, this was an FBI case, you said, right?
That was an FBI case.
Did you tell me you did something with the marshals too? Did you do something big with the marshals one time?
Yes. So I was a TFO, temporary field officer. That's it. You get assigned to. I was assigned to the marshals quite a few years. I had a great boss in that unit. He was very good at just getting everybody together and making a solid unit and reaching out locally. So the marshals have it like the marshals are the marshals. My boss in that unit ran basically a task force, and it's basically geared around cultivating local law enforcement and putting them in as TFOs, and then he would run us. Now, there were marshals involved in the case, and a lot of the guys I worked with were deputies from other counties or patrolmen from different agencies that knew everybody.
It's a task force that's put together.
So compiled a task force of local people, which makes a lot of sense because the U.S. Marshal, even if he's assigned somewhere in Northern District per se, he may know a lot of people, but that's a huge area. And he's not necessarily with every cop and know everybody.
Yeah, what's going on in a neighborhood or on the street.
It's impossible. He could know a little. Yeah, he's going to make contacts, but this unit was a great concept. I thought, like, once I got involved in it, I was like, this is huge. This is great for them and super great for us. Because the way it worked is if I had, well, first of all, if he had anything that was revolved where he would run a sheet and say, hey, so-and-so has been through Kingston, he would call me, right? And I would be like, oh, yeah, we know who that guy is. He's been through here before. We haven't seen him in 2 years, but he had a girlfriend on Henry Street. And I can find her name for you. I can get into my system. And, oh, yeah, he was collared up with her back in, 2 years ago, which gives him somebody else to talk to run a phone number, to do whatever. Or, yeah, he's here all the time. So we get together, we do a hit, we do a surveillance, we do a hit, we do our homework, and we hit and we get him. Now it works the other way for me because I'm on the Marshals Task Force, we had wound up having a couple other guys on our unit or on my agency. I would grab my guys, even though if they weren't part of it, we could use them anyway.
Mhm.
So we would get together and go look for somebody for them. On the opposite side, if we had any cases where somebody we just couldn't find and they were out of the county, the state, whatever, I would call him. I would call my boss in the Marshals, and I would say, "Hey, can we do a Marshals case on this?" And absolutely, and it would be like a collateral. He would. So say my guy's in Iowa, he
Yeah.
would send a Marshals task force in Iowa to snatch our guy, bring him home through Con Air or whatever they do.
You have the manpower, and now your manpower is spread all over the nation. What kind of are you working with the Marshals then? What did you do with them? Give me an example of some of the cases you did with the Marshals.
Well, first of all, murders would be top notch, but even just guys with felony warrants that have been out there for long enough that have bad rap sheets. Those were guys I'm not going to go to the well all the time for, hey, this guy's wanted on a burglary warrant and for no show. That's our problem. We'll deal with that. You know what I mean? But he's a serial burglar and he's being looked at for a homicide. We want that guy, right? Or he's got an old homicide on his sheet. He's dangerous, whatever it may be. Or he's a rapist. Any of those things that would pique his interest, I would bring to him and say, hey, what do you think? Can we do a case on this? Can we do a Marshals case on this? And he was always great about it, even if they were a little bit lower, but local problems, you know.
Right.
So I'll give you a great case, a great story with the Marshals. So we have a guy that he's a problem child for us, burglary wise, right? And we actually catch him, right? Patrol catches him. We had more than enough to lock him up, warrants out for him, whatever. We catch him. They're bringing him down to headquarters. He got loose in the car and got loose on the guy bringing him down.
Oh.
Snuck out of the car. He's a burglar. He's good at getting skinny. He slipped through the window in the front and went out slipped a cuff, somehow got loose. Made a case on that with them because that was personal.
Yes.
Oh yeah, that was personal. And so we worked that case. We wound up catching him down in New York through the Marshals. Just another great case. You know, just one of those cases where having that long arm, we wouldn't have been able to get him. And he was a serial burglar. If he was out there, he was just going to do it again and again. It was a problem. We had him on multiple burglaries. So that was good. You know, that, and again, that guy's not getting an appearance ticket. So I'm not going to waste my time using the Marshals when it's catch and release.
Right.
You know? So, pretty interesting. Another interesting one, an interesting way of catching him down in New York we did was pretty good. We have one of the investigators in the DA's office is amazing at catfishing people in, or again, I'll use the term, leading people into where we need to lead them. We had a Marshals case. It was in the Bronx. We need to catch the guy. He moved from one place and we didn't know where he was living at the next place. So I called her all the time, used her all the time for like, hey, can you find this guy? And I could give her half a name and she's like, is this the guy? Send me a picture. I'm like, that's the guy. Yeah, we'll get it. Right. So we work it out. She uses a pretty good ruse about sending a check to the guy because the guy moved to another apartment. We heard, still in the Bronx. She says, oh, I have a check for you, but it needs to be signed for, but nobody's at your address, yada, yada. Oh, no, that's great. I live at so-and-so now.
Mm-hmm.
Marshals, us, we all go down to the Bronx. I bring one of my narco guys who's just that guy, knows everybody, and just always picks the guy out, right?
Yeah.
So they're all sitting out. I'm sitting with the boss and with the Marshals, and we're both sitting in the van, offset a little bit. We're sitting in the truck, just offset. My guy goes, I got him. He's out here. It's summertime in the city. Guy standing out on the corner. There's 12 guys in there. He picks them out. He goes, he's over there, blue coat. Got him. He's right there. Scoop in and get him. Like it was just, and we would never had that resource between the Marshals and the task force. We're all local guys as well. Not all. A couple of them are Marshals. A couple of them are us. And
so you have more money, more manpower, more equipment.
Force multiplier. Yep. Yeah. And it works both ways for them. They can, we've captured guys for them without even having to make a big case out of it because we're like, yeah, we know exactly where he is right now, so sometimes it works, So that same person catfish or put one together for me one time. I call up and I'm like, look, I'm getting my chops. This is a sex offender out here and everybody keeps seeing them. I need to find them. And she's waiting to get on an airplane. She's down in Florida. She's waiting to get. I catch her and I hear she's in an airport. Yeah,
She's on
on
vacation.
vacation.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh my God, I'm so sorry to bother. She goes, no, give me the guy's name. I get the name. She calls me back in 5 minutes. She says, I got him coming to the corner for you. He's going to be on East Chester Street. And Lincoln. I'm like, are you kidding me? I set up a box. I go up there. I'm like, yeah, send him over. Yep, he's going to be coming to you any minute.
What's the rules? What got him to come?
I forget what she used. She used something. I think it was a sexting. I think she set up a sex. Hey, I want to meet. Blah 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 blah. You know what I mean? Like so, because he was a deviant, like that way. So got him on the corner, and I'm like, lo and behold, walked right into us. So I'm like,
beautiful.
You know, I always say to myself, be careful. That girl could take away your birthday and your social security number if you want.
Yeah.
So very impressive when it comes to that. So yeah, like again, it's all resources. You know, it's all resources.
Oh, absolutely. It comes, you need the manpower, you need the equipment, you need the time, et cetera, and all of those things add to the time.
Right.
You know,
exactly.
Because if you got to do something else, you can't do this. That's how simple it is.
Right. Right. Exactly.
So
and
30.
Again, I'm sorry. With that,
I'm just gonna say 31 years on the job, right? All these, different avenues that you took. What was your favorite?
My favorite time in the job, man, I loved all of it. I loved all of it, and I hated all of it. You know how it goes.
It is
Some days you're like, what am I doing? I remember when I left, I think I told you, it was like, I got that call, and I was like, I think it's time. You know, this will be a good move for me, and it's time to move on and pass it on, to the next group. But I was lucky. I was blessed to have the career I had. Like I said before, not bragging or saying what I did, but I got to be patrol. I got to be narco, which I loved. I got to be a hostage negotiator. I got to be a firearms instructor. I got to be an ESU TAC guy. I got to be, again, like I said, negotiations. I got to work in squad work. I got to be able to do squad work. All these things were tools in the shed, and they all connect one way or other to each part of that job, Like it was great to be able to switch the hats out. I was lucky to have a pretty good career, and all that narco and no holes in me. So that's a good thing.
Yes. Thank God that's for that.
So, and yourself, like you've been through it all too. So, you know the situation.
Oh, I didn't do quite as long as you did, my friend.
Well, you're smarter. So that was just too much Irish tenacity, I'm going to stick it out. Sooner or later, you got to stop.
1 year though, and you're still at it. You're still at it with.
I am. Yep. And it's still good because believe it or not, I still talk to my CIs because I run into them. Not because I call them all the time or anything. Occasionally, I will if somebody needs me to help them with it or whatever. But I still manage a relationship with them enough to like, hey, give me a call if something happens, and it works both ways. You've ran CIs. It's a delicate business. You know what I mean? You have to have an iron fist, but you have to have a soothing voice. You have to be able to get along with them, but you also have to be able to be like.
Well, there's this thing, like kids today all the time. Kids, younger people, younger than us, just because we're old. So
right.
Everybody always wants to talk about empathy, and you must be, in order to do this job, empathetic and sympathetic to where people come from. If you can understand where they come from, which again, we're all people. Each of us grew up the exact same way. It's just someone took a different road, If you can understand where they come from, let them know that you understand where they're coming from.
You're right. And being in a local situation, like not New York City, I see these people all the time, and weirdly, of course, seeing all the old cop friends of mine, I love that, right? And we all catch up or whatever. And sometimes we don't see each other for a while or whatever. But even running into guys like Collard or guys that I've negotiated or that I've had run-ins with or OCIs, still like say, hey, how you been? Like, hey man, how you been? That's nice to be able to have that because I am going to run into them. It is a small community. Most of the time, and there's a bunch of people there that don't like me. You know what I mean?
Well, they hold a grudge. I know.
Exactly. I've had two or three 2 or 3 times where money was put on me, loosely, but it got back to me. So those are kind of scary. You know, you worry about that.
And again, I know what you're talking about, but tell the listeners what you're talking about. Money put on you.
Yeah. If people wanted to have a hit on me, they put a hit on me. Right.
Exactly.
So, and these are low-level people that with not a lot of money, but trying to put hits on me. And
Well, all you need is the right guy that's that low-level money, you know?
that's scary because they're just hungry enough to do it. For me, I handled that myself on the couple of times that it happened by, again, because of having decent relationships with my CIs, even when I didn't owe them one or they didn't owe me one, they called me and they were like, hey man, I hear so-and-so's looking to put a hurt on you, you know, or they put a number out on you. I'm like, really? So I handled that by myself, you know, not by myself, like by myself. Yeah, pretty much. I would get a hold of that guy, sit down with him and say, I heard you looking for me. If you got something to say it now. We'll hash that out right now. And, oh, no, I didn't mean anything by it. I don't know. I was just mad, blah, 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 blah. All right, well, get on mad because sooner or later, this is not going to end well for you. Everybody knows now what you did. You know what I mean? So, and it worked. Squashed. You know what I mean? I didn't want to make a big thing out of it. Then it makes it worse. And then if it doesn't go the way, I wanted to control that myself. In other words, I wanted to make sure that was done the way that I felt comfortable with it for me and anybody around me, you know? So it's you know, I mean, none of it was, hey, nobody's putting a number on me for $100,000. Nobody's got that kind of money here. Luckily, we're good. But, you know, you have people that don't like you and you have people that like you.
Yes, sir. But it happens, and you got to be aware of it. You have to be careful.
Yeah.
So,
but for me, it's in the same community that I'm still working in. So it's interesting. Like, it's not like I can go from one borough to the next and almost like,
well, for myself, I have, you know, over the years, maybe 4 times run into people that I had, you know, like when I say run into, obviously when you're working the precinct, you see them all the time.
Right.
But I'd be down, you know, I worked in the Bronx, I'd be down in Manhattan, you know, and I'd run into a guy and I'd go, shit, you know? And 2 of those times, one guy actually called to me from across the street, came across and shook my hand like we were friends.
Really?
Very strange. Yeah, it was just strange to me, you know? Another fella, I was on the subway, I'm going home. Young kid comes up, you know, and I didn't recognize him at first because, you know, you see 1,000 guys and he's probably 2 or 3 years older than when I had locked him up. But when I would ride the subway anyway, I would always have my little pistol in my pocket, you know? So I have my hands in my pocket when I'm on the train. Exactly. So if I have to, right through my jacket, you know? This kid comes up to me now and says, you're Myers, right? I said, yeah. He said, yeah, you arrested me a couple of years ago for a stolen car. And I'm like, oh, where's this going to go? But before I could even get the words out, he says, man, you rescued me. That's the words he used, rescued. You were rescued.
Really?
He says, after going to Rikers Island, I was never going to go there again.
Good.
I said, how about that? It actually worked that time.
Right.
It actually worked that time, you know?
Right. And it makes you feel actually good. You know, like,
it was like almost happy to see me, you know?
Right.
And, you know, we chatted for a couple of stops until I got off, you know? And it was a very strange thing because I was so used to, you know, usually, you know, you have to, they hate you and you hate them, that attitude, you know?
Yeah.
For that particular kid, it was an interesting ride home that night.
But,
you know?
yeah, right? It makes you think. It's pretty good.
Exactly.
I do want to tell you, I know it's separate from kind of what we're talking about, but we're talking about the gun in the pocket thing.
Yeah.
So I got a good UC story for you real quick. So you'll like it. I was working with the state. I was buying guns from a guy whose name was Killer. Give me a break. Come up with a better name, right? So,
yeah, right.
All right. I'm like, really? You guys are sending me on that? But okay, whatever. So I go, I meet the kid, whatever. I buy a handgun off him. Then I buy 2, whatever. Like, we're going to buy a couple. We're trying to see what else he's got. So then he calls me up and he says to me, hey, I got this fully automatic shotgun.
Oh.
I had it modified. You want it? You know, it's a expensive shotgun, all jacked up, blah, 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 supposedly, right?
This turned into a very interesting case.
So this is getting cool. So I'm like, all right. I said, I'm in. It's $1,000 or something, right? So I'm like, okay, so now I got to go up there with $1,000. And I meet this kid, and I'm like, I'm not going to take this thing unless I know it works, right? So I'm just praying the backup follows me. It's in a small village, right? But we're going to take a ride up. I said, let's take a ride, and we got to go shoot it up in the woods or something, right? So I just pray the backup follows me because I had to go. I didn't have a choice. It was the only way. I got to do the UC, and I got to pray my backup is that talented, and they were. Seriously good backup. And I knew that. I wouldn't have done it if I didn't trust the backup. So I'm driving up there, self-service is sketchy, and I know it. We're up in the middle of nowhere. We're going to drive off a back road. And they didn't know this was going to happen, so they're freaking out a little. I knew they were going to be freaking out. They did the right thing. They stayed with me long enough. We pull off, go into like this little dirt road. And we take the thing out and go to test fire, right? So I'm shooting it, and it shoots fine, but it's a semi-automatic regular shotgun.
It's not
So
automatic.
I'm like, I said, this thing ain't working, man. It's supposed to be full auto. I said, fuck. So I don't think he was whipping me. I think the guy fucked up whatever it was that he was doing to make it work, right?
Yeah.
So he goes, let me try it. Shit. Now I'm up in the woods with a gun dealer with, who knows, I got at least 1,000 in my pocket and nobody's around. I'm like, shit, this is not going to end well. So I did the same thing. I had my 38 in the pocket. So I give him the gun, and instead of standing away from him, tell me what you think. I stood as close to him as I could. I'm like, yeah, it's fucked up. And I had my hands in my pockets because it was cold in my coat, and I had the gun pointed right at him. And I figured if he swung the gun towards me, he'd have to step back, and I could get one shot off. I had a revolver, so I could get more than one off. And I already had this in my head because backup couldn't be anywhere near me.
Right.
If they saw a car out there, we would have been screwed. So we fuck with the shotgun. It doesn't work. And I'm like, take it back. I don't want it, right? So no need. We got him on 2 or 3 hands. So it was good enough. He just never came through with the other. Because here's what happens. I'll give you a fuck up on our side. I got my UC phone, right? My job phone, we made my UC phone. I asked my boss, does this come back to me? I don't want this coming back to me. This is a job, associated phone. No problem. This kid catches a vibe for whatever reason, and he's smarter than your average bear. He calls up, I think it was, whatever it was, AT&T, whatever the hell it was. He calls up the company, and he says, hey, I'd like to pay my bill. I don't remember my account number or whatever. He gets the number, and it comes back to the Kingston Police. For my boss, right? So I'm like, shit. And the kid was smart, right? So he calls me on the cell phone, and he says, where would you like me to turn myself in, sir? I said, go to the state police barracks. I'll meet you there.
Right.
And he showed up.
Wow.
And I luckily didn't get myself killed. I was like, damn it. So, word to the wise, I don't do that anymore. So, I'll register the phone in the name that I want to register it in. So, obviously I had a fake ID and stuff by then, but it was too late. I already had that phone,
Right.
So.
Now, did you guys do that? Did you have nondescript plates and things like that also?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. All the plates were good. And if I got hits on them, we were notified. They were listed to us, so we know.
And nondescript plates, for people that don't know what we're talking about, is they basically scrub your license plate from the state database. So if anybody looks up your license plate, they won't know who you are,
Correct.
And I remember, of course, driving too fast, doing things I shouldn't do in the car or whatever.
Right.
Biggest thing, troopers would pull me over because your license plate doesn't exist. Who the hell are you?
It comes back no hit. Right.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. And they didn't like it. So I used to get pulled over all the time for that.
I know. But for that unit, they were good about it. We had plates that came back to a company, to a bullshit moving company or some shit. I'm like, yeah, I work for those guys. They give me this car to take home because I got to drive the truck back and forth or whatever. I had an excuse if they ever ran it.
Right.
So, and I had a fake license. So that was a legitimate license in the system under a different name. So, so I was pretty much covered. If they dug any deeper or they backed my cell phone, which they did, the kid got me with that one. I got to say, that was pretty slick on his part. That was one spot we didn't figure.
For him.
Yeah.
Good looking out for him. That's pretty wild.
And he did the right thing. He just turned himself in. Yeah. I said, well, I didn't even bother fucking with him because I knew damn well he had it, so I was like, yeah.
What did you do? You bought 2 guns off of him?
I bought 2 or 3. I think I might have got 3 off him. I got 2 handguns And then I bought the rifle. I'm pretty sure that's what it was. Yeah. Yeah, we were setting up another one, and he must have got squirrely, got a vibe, felt like, I don't know this guy. And he did his homework. I give him credit, So that was my little story on the side with the use of stuff. It just made me think of that with the whole gun right in the pocket thing. I was like, I hope this works. But I felt bad for the backup. When they got back, they said, man, what the hell? We were sweating bullets. Because they didn't know, they expected me to just do the buy and get out, and that kind of, I was like, well, I hope that's thinking on the
That's what I like about revolvers, especially if it's spurless. You can
I had no hammer. Yeah.
No, that's spurless. Yeah, no hammer. You keep it in your pocket, it'll work perfectly well.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So, can't do that with an automatic. So.
No. Right. And again, if there's no such thing as jams, if it doesn't go off, pull the trigger again. Right. So that's the best part about them. So,
I always like them. I always do.
No playing around.
Yeah.
So, all right. Really, honestly, I'm good with a 38 plus P. That works.
Me too. That works. I don't want to get shot with any of them.
No, nothing would be bad. So, yeah. No, so that's that was just one of my silly stories. But going back to the people that you meet, it was funny. I walk around with my girl. We're talking like she works in. She's worked with me for years. Like she's always catching those cases with me and stuff like that. And she remembers a lot of the cases. We work together all the time. We're very close. She will run into somebody and goes, "You remember that guy?" And I'm like, "No." She's like, "You negotiated him off a bridge." I'm like, I forgot about that guy. You know what I mean? Like, I just don't remember. It's a case. It's a job, and you do it, and you forget about it.
Add up after a while.
What's that?
They do add up after a while.
Yeah, they do. They do.
The next thing you know, you've got hundreds of people and the years go by. They change. They look different.
Yeah. And I just don't remember. She just had that memory of those cases. She's like, there's a couple of them there that like, hey, you remember that girl right over there? She was being held hostage by her boyfriend. You negotiated him out. Remember that? And I'm like, that's the girl? I was so fixed to the other part of it. She goes, yeah, she knows who you are. She says, and I'm like, what's nice to know? You know what I mean? Like, so there's some good wins. Those are good wins. Like,
oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. It's always good to put somebody bad away. We all get that. But it's always kind of nice to be like, hey, you saved somebody off a bridge. You know what I mean? Or something like that. That's a plus. That's a huge plus.
No, I always like those stories, though.
Yep, they're good ones. So,
Brian, it's been so nice sitting with you again, my friend. It really has.
You too, my friend. You too. Thank you for letting me ramble on.
No, ramble on. I think we blew through this like it was nothing again. It's so easy talking to you.
Yeah, you too. So,
until next time, my friend.
Yes, thank you so much.
Really appreciate it.
Nope, thank you very much. Thanks for having me again.
All the best, brother.
Take care.
All right. Good guy, right? I really like this kid, Brian. Good man. Did a lot of good work. That's it. Thank you very much for tuning in. Please do the right thing. Hit that subscribe button. Hit that like button. Tell all your friends so they can come and visit me here at Another Nobody. We appreciate it. All the best, my friends. Goodbye.
Listen up. This one's important. I'd like to try to encourage you, please, to give to the Stephen Siller Foundation, Tunnel to Towers, at T2T.org. That's letter T, number 2, letter T.org. Do good for those who've done good for you.